Good morning, everybody. My name's Jason Wisniewski. Mark was kind enough to ask me to give a little presentation on my experience so far in regenerative agriculture. My family and I are pretty new to this, so this is really just from my perspective how someone is going to get interested and become attracted to this. And I've got to give you all that have been doing this for years already a lot of kudos because of your message and sharing your story, like Tom was alluding to. People like me have a resource to turn to. You're making a difference by doing this. The coalition, sharing your message wherever you can with publications, on the internet, doing YouTube videos. This stuff helps a lot. My family just got into this within the last year, and it's been a whirlwind. There's a lot of information to absorb, so thank you for what you're doing. You're making an impact, and I encourage you all to continue sharing what you're learning and engaging with the coalition. So this is just from my perspective how I came to be interested in this. We're going to start. This is the agenda I've got. I'm going to go through my background. I'm going to tell you about what kind of started making me question things, or what I call glitches in the matrix. I think Elon Musk used that in one of his speeches recently. And then why I think landowners are going to be becoming more and more interested in soil health. Why some people maybe are avoiding soil health. And then the process that I'm using to try and transition my family's land with my family and our existing renters. And then some resources that I've found really helpful and I think other people could get some use of. So to start with, my family owns 1,100 acres near Ivanhoe, Minnesota, which is west of Marshall, Minnesota, about 20 minutes. I left the farm after high school. Growing up, my parents said, there's no reason to get into this. This is not a way to make money. We want a lot more for you. So I went off to college. And as far as I was concerned, I was done farming. I was done with the farm. But it's hard to keep a farm kid completely out of it. So as soon as I graduated college, I went to work for John Deere. And I thought this is a great way to stay engaged with the industry. I still love farming. I love being outside. I love the people. I want to be involved in some way. So I went to work for John Deere Corporate. And then for the last 5 to 6 years, I transitioned into doing some commercial real estate and private equities stuff, which kind of, I'll show you how that kind of transitions into all of this as well. So this is our farm before my father quit farming and rented out all of his land. We used to do some no-till beans into the corn, but then we would till after the beans. So it was just an every other year. Mostly corn, soybean rotation. Dad did some wheat here and there, but it's been many years since he's done that. This is, kind of the equipment that we work with, a small operation. The farm that I grew up on was 240 acres. My grandfather we farm with has another 900 acres. So this is my dad hauling out his last bin full of grain before he rented out all of his land. So my family and my grandfather's family, we've got, this is what our size of our operation is, 730 acres of drillable land, which is the correct term as I understand it now, 200 acres of pasture and hay, 55 acres of CRP, and 150 acres of wetlands, yard sites, woods. And then today we have 4 different renters that all this is divvied out to. So as I was working for John Deere, and different, I worked for a smaller company after John Deere. I started to question things, you know. It was a lot of fun. I loved it, what I was learning. John Deere, I was working in their electronics department, working projects that were multi-million-dollar projects to develop everything from telematics devices, the Starfire globes, the displays in the tractors. And it was just astounding to me, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we were pouring into these programs. And, you know, I got to sit in cool, big equipment, travel the country. This is a sweet potato field in Louisiana. They flew me down on a jet with the executives of the company. And it was pretty cool, coming from a small farm and being able to travel and see this type of money moving around in the industry, and going back and telling my family. It was a lot of fun to chat about. This is a test site for one of our products. I sold a cedar monitor, which would have been handy in that story you were telling about your test plots earlier, Tom. This is how much we thought about biology in our product. We had a test plot in Arizona, in this literally in the desert, an hour west of Phoenix, and we just were going up and down this desert, testing out our product. Biology, nobody even mentioned. But it's even when I started working for John Deere right after college, it was 2010 or 2009 or 2010. Commodity prices were doing pretty well in that time period. And all my coworkers told me farmers are rich. They were all from the city. They hadn't grown up on a farm, but they told me farmers are rich. And I thought, this just doesn't at all jive with my experience growing up, with my Goodwill clothing and my parents stressing out on the farm. But what they see, the people that work at these companies, the input providers and the equipment manufacturers, they see your shiny new equipment, they see your brand new pickup trucks, and they think you're just bailing money out there. Like Tom, you know? But my perspective, my experience was, yeah, we're rich in passion, poor in giving up. And there was constant propaganda coming from John Deere corporate, from the executives in Illinois and Iowa. We'd get these emails about feeding the world and how what we were doing in our cubicles was the greatest thing we could do for society in the world, because the population is a never-ending, exploding thing that's out of control. And we have to increase yields, we have to increase efficiency, and farming by the foot is the only solution. We need to get more granular, we need to be able to spray individual weeds, we need to know everything about this foot of the field versus this foot of the field, because they're completely different. And that's the way the whole industry is going, hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's all on the backs of the producers. I'm getting flown around. I'm going out to farm shows, and I'm trying to justify why a grower should buy my seeding monitor. I'm trying to show him, hey, if you have a skip, this is what you're going to lose in yields on that acre. And I try to break it down to monetary terms for him. But it became really tough. And it just really wasn't sitting well with me after a few years of doing that. And it was interesting, when I went out to look for John Deere's propaganda on this, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years since I've worked there. It's getting really hard to see as much talk about feeding the world, and now it's a lot more about sustainability. So it was actually hard to find them talking about feeding the world anymore. And there's some good reasons. They're smartening up about that message. So let's get into that. Working at John Deere, everybody's saying farmers are rich. We need to feed the world. We're on the edge of starvation. And I'm thinking, well, as far as I know, commodity prices haven't gone up in the last 50 years. Inflation adjusted, they're going down. That's what we see here. From the early 1900s to the mid-2000s, our commodity prices are going down. Now, you see here in World War II, we had a spike for good reason, feeding the troops and a lot more exports. And then in the early 70s, Russia just about starved, and some interesting policies were put into effect by Secretary of Agriculture Rusty Butts. That's when Rusty told us, get big or get out. Farm fence row to fence row. Took out the floor on the prices. And ever since then, it's been pretty steady decline. Till that little bubble when I started working at John Deere and everybody told me farmers were rich again. So this is going through my mind while I'm sitting there at John Deere. We're at the edge of starvation, but prices are going down. Now, this is really weird. I went to business school, and there was this thing called supply and demand. If we're at the edge of starvation, you would think there would be people begging farmers, knocking on their door to have a bit of their crop. Prices shouldn't be going down. So what's going on? Corn yields have increased fourfold, while the price has significantly declined. This is over the last 65, 70 years. Here we've got, so corn yields have gone up, and this is land use. Corn land use. And look at soybean land use from like 25 million acres to 125 million. So corn land has doubled over this time period since 1961. And soybean land increased a five-fold. So our yields are skyrocketing. Our land in production is skyrocketing. Meanwhile, world population growth is slowing. We are at about 1.1% annual population growth worldwide. And that's expected to drop off, actually completely plateau by the end of the century and start declining. A lot of reasons for that. Fertility, more developed nations don't have as many children. People just can't get along. I don't know. So here it is. This is the rate of growth. This is today. We're at about 7.7 billion, 8 billion people. The rate of population growth is dropping rapidly. So these people, by the end of the century, we're going to have maybe 10 to 11 billion people. A big part of that is India and China. They're becoming more developed. They're having fewer children. Infertility rates are going up. Tom was talking about some of the reasons probably for that related to agriculture again and our chemical use. But this was the slide that kept me up last night because I just pulled this data off of the USDA's website. This is the actual crop production, bushels of corn and bushels of soybeans. These look like pretty gradual lines, but once you look at the numbers here, we're almost at, this is probably in the tens of millions for soybeans, and then corn is just skyrocketed. This is just U.S. production. Corn bushels have gone up over 5-fold since 1950, and soybeans over 14-fold. Population growth in that time period, 3 times. We have 3 times the people since 1950, but we're producing 20 times the crop. So this leads me to what I believe is the most dangerous misconception in agriculture today. The idea that we, as farmers, are feeding the world. When 40% of our corn goes into gas tanks, that decreases fuel efficiency, and population growth is slowing, I think we all need to stop, take a step back, and instead of saying, I feel good about what I'm doing because I'm feeding all these starving people across the world, we need to focus on feeding ourselves and our families. This has gotten out of control. So why does this persist? This is a question for you guys. Why do you think this has persisted? Anybody have just I don't know. I don't know the answer. I've got some ideas. What's another idea out there?
I think it's been too much focus on yield.
Too much focus on yield? What's driving that? Why are we doing that? Input suppliers. Greed. Right? Somebody's making money. Somebody's incentivized to keep this system going.
We send our kids off to have somebody else educate them, and the educators are driven by the policymakers of what should happen in the world rather than the people on the farm.
Education is being driven by policymakers. Policymakers are being driven by the input providers, lobbyists. It's a mess. The Farm Bill. We as growers need to help each other wake up to this. I'm coming at it from real estate and private equity background most recently, and I'm starting to think about my family's land and what this means for our future and for my kids and their kids. How does soil health and this system we've created to degrade our land, how is it going to affect the legacy I have for my children? So I started asking, well, when does this affect land value? It seems like farmland's just going up and up until it's not. So I was trying to connect, when is it going to actually connect with the farmer? When is their land not going to be worth anything? I think it's going to happen all of a sudden. When your desertification, when those pictures that TJ was showing out in his field, when that takes over, when your neighbor's actions completely destroy your field and you can't grow anything out there anymore, tell me what the value of that land is going to be. I know, Grant, you're a big successful farmer. If I had these 2 parcels to sell, which one would you rather buy? Right. There's some pretty degraded land that goes for way too much money today. But I think once it gets to that point, even the dumbest guy can tell you which one he's going to buy. So those are the questions that kind of got me into questioning the whole system that we have and interested in a better way. I got turned on to ALLAN SAVORY. It was actually my fiance after I told her I was going to go vegan. I said, this is pissing me off, all the destruction we're doing to the Amazon rainforest, all this grain is just going to feed livestock, we're destroying the world. And she said, I don't want to just eat vegetables. How about we look for an alternative? And we found Allan's talk about how he's, since the 1960s, been saving grasslands in Africa, converting deserts. He had a really tragic story about his learning experience where he actually got the wildlife organization there in Africa to slaughter over 40,000 elephants because they thought they were the problem. That they thought the herd of elephants and the herd of wildlife in Africa were destroying the land. They found out it just got a lot worse when they took those animals off that land. So he's got a really great story, a great book that I have yet to read, but Holistic Management. But his story is also one that makes me tell people, if you can do it in northern Africa, you can do it anywhere. Tom said it best yesterday. These guys didn't build these pyramids in the middle of a desert. You read the Bible, this was the most productive breadbasket in the world. And that's what's left. It takes a lot of energy to build that by hand. You're telling me they trucked in wheat from hundreds of miles away? This is the direction we're heading if we don't change quick. And then I found Gabe's resource, his book, and I had him come out to our farm. This is just about a month or two ago. It was like drinking through a fire hose with that guy, and I feel the same way whenever I get to sit down with you folks. There's a lot to absorb. So why? Why do this? As somebody that's expecting to inherit land, why would I want my family to get into soil health? Well, I've always had a strong passion for finance. I want to know from a wealth management perspective, how can I protect my family's greatest asset? You look at our balance sheet, the land, the soil, is the most valuable thing on it. We should all be thinking about that, thinking like business owners. Look at your balance sheet. Your land is the biggest part of it. That's what the bank sees. That's what they want as collateral on your operating loans. What's the best way to protect that? What's the best way to enhance it? We just didn't know about this approach. Thanks to you folks for getting the message out. We were able to find it once we started asking the questions. Not everybody even knows to ask the questions. Not everybody knows there's a different approach, so we have to keep talking about it. We have to start sharing this. Continue sharing it. Another big reason was personal health. That's actually how I found about the term regenerative agriculture. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I was looking for ways to keep my energy up and to stay healthy. My grandmother died of cancer a few years ago, and I thought, how can I prevent this happening to me and my family? How can I get clean source of food? Food sovereignty. Think about what happened in COVID. That was close to grocery store shelves going empty. It was hard for some people to get meat, or you were paying $7-8 for confinement operation beef. I want the ability, if another bump or a ripple comes through the food system, I don't have to be connected to it. I want to be able to feed my family. I want to have livestock that we can slaughter on the farm, or vegetables growing, soils that are healthy and resilient enough to go out and plant vegetables, produce. And I was looking for a way to get back to the farm, a way to spend more time with my family. And this is a lucrative path. I think that's the way we can really begin this conversation with our neighbors and the folks in our community. That's something Gabe taught me to start with is don't go at people with the climate. Don't go at people with biology. Go at people with their pocketbooks. When you go up to somebody and you say, I'm not trying to sell you anything, I'm actually trying to tell you to stop buying stuff, they kind of take a step back and just about, tumble over. They don't understand why you're even talking to them. You're telling them you can go from losing money on an acre or making $50 an acre to earning $500 plus profit per acre. We're not talking yield anymore. You get them into that mindset. What are you spending every year on that acre? And then it's just, for me, this is a great way to combine my experience working in the industry, growing up on the farm. So I've gotten really passionate about this. Back to the food sovereignty thing. If an emergency happens and we don't have access to good, clean, healthy food, I want my family to have land that we can go and we can grow stuff on. I don't want delays from residual herbicides if possible, or a lack of soil biology. We need food. We had a lot of prevent plant a couple of years ago, all of my family's farm. And I went for a walk one day, and I had never seen so much wildlife on our farm because we had covers all over the farm. Butterflies, birds I'd never seen. I remember a huge flock of mourning doves, and that's when it really hit me. Like, what we are doing with these monocultures and these chemicals is completely destroying that ecosystem. There's a lot of wildlife out there that wants to come back and spend time on your farm. And chemical exposure. I don't want my dad mixing chemicals. It's harder than hell to get him to put the bottle down, but we're working through that right now. A lot has come out. A lot of court cases against Monsanto and glyphosate today. Billions of dollars of settlements. It's not being talked about. It's not in the mainstream media. They really messed up the ecosystem in a lot of people's lives with that chemical. So once you get into this, you gotta hone in on these 6 principles. A soil health school would not be complete without talking about the 6 principles of soil health. If you take nothing else away from this school and you haven't seen or heard of these yet, this is the only thing to remember if you're only going to take one thing away. Every decision you make should be filtered through these principles. Don't disturb the soil. That's our no-till. Chemical disturbance, traffic, cover and build armor on the soil, protecting it from sun, keeping moisture on that soil. Diversity. There's a lot we don't understand about how plants work with the biology and with each other. We just know it works from experience and a lot of trials now. We're starting to figure it out. Keeping living roots in the soil. That prevents your water erosion, your wind erosion, builds those aggregates. And integrate livestock when possible. That's the icing on the cake. If you really want to see results quick, getting livestock on the field is the best way to do it. So in that respect, I was curious of farmers here. If you are just doing crops and you had the opportunity to bring livestock back onto the farm to earn a 6-figure income, consider if you would do that. There's a lot of farmers out there today that will not do it. They are used to being able to escape the farm, go down to Florida for the winter. They will not do it, even if their livelihood depends on it. They'd rather move to town, sell the farm, than bring livestock back. And I think that's fundamentally a misunderstanding of what it takes. Ben showed us how to fence yesterday, single-strand poly wire, 45 minutes a day to let those animals into the next paddock. A neighbor can help you out when you have to go to a wedding or go on vacation. People make it seem like way too big of a deal. What do you want your farm to look like in 200 years? That's what this is about. So it's important, I think, that everybody start asking that question. Why not do soil health? That might be the easier question. I think it's just a bunch of excuses. The most dense compaction layer we encounter is right between your ears. It happens to me too. We need to take out the I can't out of our vocabulary. There's a lot of people out there that have proven it can be done, a lot of resources, a lot of people willing to help, which is very different than the conventional mindset where people hold their cards so close to their chest. We're all here to help each other figure this out, and I've found the community to be extremely welcoming. So that leads me to transitioning with family and renters. It's a challenging thing. I'm still figuring it out. We're at the very beginning of this, so I'm just going to show some ideas. Happy to take input afterwards if anybody has any others. But I think one of the most important things is education and observation. Getting out in the field with your renters, with your family, sinking a shovel into the soil, showing people the difference, your family and your renters, the difference between that grove and this field. What happened? Why is it easy to sink that shovel? Why is the forest or the wood area or the fence line, why does that have such good aggregation? Why does water infiltrate so quickly when the field does not, when you can't even get 2 inches down with the shovel in the field? So this is on our property, my dad's soybean field on the left, and then the CRP right next to it. See the aggregation? This is just one hard clump. That's where we're at today. I hope in a few years I've got a slide that shows a different picture. One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is rental agreements. You know, how do you incentivize renters to work with you on this? You have to do something probably that's going to be a little longer term so they've got more incentive, maybe a 5 to even 15-year term. Doing a crop share or having a fixed limit that's revisited annually. Grant was telling me that's something that's worked for them. And then I think all your renters should take the Regen Ag 101 class offered by the Soil Health Academy. A little education, I think, would go a long way. And this might be administratively burdensome, or we could have our renters do a self-analysis, but I think there should be a direct connection to the soil health principles. Give yourself a rating every year. You know, did you implement no-till? That, I think, has to be a requirement on our fields. Traffic, you know, did you minimize traffic? Did you minimize chemical applications? How well did you do at keeping armor on the soil? How well did you do at diversity? What was the number of species you put in the cover crop mixes? Were you watching the CN ratio? how often did you have living roots in the soil? Did you have that planter out, the drill out there right behind the combine? And then were you able to integrate livestock? If you can get livestock on our land, you know, that's, maybe we can do a discount or something on the rent. So I've put our family's land up on these sites just to see what kind of demand is out there. It's been every week. That was one thing I was just curious about, how many people out there are interested in renting land while performing regenerative practices. These are a few sites here in Minnesota that are really good for connecting. I've found all sorts of people that are willing to do custom grazing in our area. So I don't have to worry about starting my own herd, doing selective breeding. Lots of folks are interested in doing regenerative practices, so get those conversations started. Obviously, get involved with the coalition here. It's a great way to network. I've found a lot of value talking with Ben and Grant and Mark and the rest of the guys in the coalition. I'm still getting to know. This is my website. If you want to follow my journey, I'm going to keep throwing updates on there, and you can always reach out to me. Afterwards, I can give you a card or something. But that is all. Thank you, folks.